welcome to another edition of Booty and Baribeau. I'm Rachel Baribeau. He is Josh Booty. Welcome in to week number 7, Josh Booty. And what a weekend it was. ESPN, I feel like they have to name every weekend. I felt like this weekend was get your respect back college football weekend.
I think you're right. There's a lot of teams. One that really comes to mind is the University of Tennessee and what they were able to do against Georgia. They came in as an underdog and really had their back against the wall. And Butch Jones and everything negative that has come out of Tennessee and the camp of Tennessee, the whole state of Tennessee, and what he's had to deal with, and for him to do that good of job preparing his kids for a big second half and a win versus Georgia was monumental for him as a coach. And I know we're going to talk a little bit later about some of the non-conference stuff or out of the SEC stuff. But Charlie Strong did the same thing. They played a great game down there in Dallas. And came out with a win. So, to watch some good things happen for a good guy, and I've heard nothing but good things about Butch Jones. We talked to David Green last week. He likes him a lot, and I'm just happy for him that he got him a big-time win.
I was talking to somebody last night, and I went through training camp, and one of the only female sportscasters that have done that, and I did that years ago with the professional indoor team because I didn't want any man to ever say to me, you don't know anything about football. But still, Josh, it was a training camp. I haven't played. So I like to look at football from kind of a different perspective, a larger scope, if you will. And one of the things that I've always been interested in and I've always remembered is that football is a game of 2 games within 1 game, right? So you don't get too excited about what's happening in the first half because it's really about who out-adjusts one another. What coach is going to out-adjust the other team and make those critical adjustments. And I felt like, and it's something we're going to talk about today, but I felt like Tennessee took a major step forward to Mike DeBoer and Butch Jones and that team in terms of making the adjustments in the second half to be able to win a ball game and doing the all-important finishing in that ball game.
Yes, sir, they did. I think that the difference in the ball game was Joshua Dobbs in the way that he really handled everything that was thrown at him. He threw the ball well. He completed balls. A lot of that happened in the second half. He ran the football well when it wasn't there. We talked about last week the quarterbacks and what's designed for a quarterback if the play isn't there. What do you do with the football and how do you become great with the football in your hands if the play doesn't develop the way it's supposed to? You take it down and run and make a play, or do you take a sack, or do you throw the ball away? And that's the things that he did well in that ball game. And eventually it took its toll over time, and he started to really play well, and they moved the football great because of the way he handled his situations. But, football, it's a lot like golf. You got 9 holes, and then you make the turn, and, if it's me, if I'm playing bad on the front, I might grab me a little adult beverage, and I'm better on the back. So it's a tale of 2 halves. Don't tell Sark to drink anything, but between his 9, but it's fun to watch teams go in, and that's what separates the great teams from the good teams is like a Bill Belichick and the Patriots. You always know they're going to come out in the second half and they're going to be well coached and well prepared, and it seems like they take over in second halves. Alabama does a good job of that. I know Saban, he likes to make halftime adjustments. When you go in the locker room, it seems like he hits on almost everything you can hit on. And I was in those locker rooms, so I've seen it firsthand. And I think that's what the best coaches do. They make adjustments at halftime and then play with your strengths, as a team.
We want to talk about, and we've been kind of toying around with the idea. I know we're going to get into it a little bit later on, but give us a little bit of a forecast, a little bit of preview of what finishing looks like. If you're in a practice, like what exactly do you think, or what can you surmise happened in practice last week? Before that Tennessee-Georgia game, what did the coach focus on more in the last week that maybe he hasn't before to really initiate that finishing?
Well, I think a lot of it is being what they've heard through the media and through just outside people and outside forces is, hey, you guys are having a big problem finishing. So what are they going to do? They're going to coach that up like crazy. That's probably the number one thing that's been on Butch Jones's mind in the last month is finishing games. How do we get our team to finish and win and become winners and create a culture? And so you got to coach situational football. You've got to coach details. There's 100 things that you could boil it down to when you talk about finishing a game, and I could go through it all. But those are the main things you've really got to do. Is you've got to be able to finish, and you've got to be able to be strong in the fourth quarter. It's good to close out first half strong. It's good to close out the game strong. And if you preach that to your kids, what do? They're going to play for 60 minutes strong. They don't have a chance to really rest on your morals, and that's what happened to them against Oklahoma, and that's what happened to them against Florida. They didn't play smart in the second halves of those ball games, and ended up getting beat.
Josh Booty, if there's one team that you could look to that can be like the poster child for finishing, it would be the Alabama Crimson Tide. I have some memorabilia behind me. You and I have talked about this and laughed about it, covered them for several years if somebody's just joining us. But they are like a boa constrictor, and that's what I like to say about them. If you look at just the score, and you got to look beyond the score, you got to look beyond the stats. But if you look beyond the score and the stats of that game against Arkansas, there was a garbage touchdown for Arkansas at the end. But they really started to just enforce their will to be that boa constrictor, step on the throat at the end of the game. Whatever Nick Saban's done, whatever is in his culture, whatever he teaches, that toughness and attention to detail, that Bama football, a lot of teams around the country could take a cue from his book.
Yeah, for sure. And that's a lot of what I know in football about finishing and playing for 60 minutes has been stressed by Nick Saban. And that's where I've gotten a lot of, I guess, my football intellect is from him, because just listening to him in locker rooms is a special treat, because you know how much he cares about those situations. And that was so odd a few years ago when they went to Auburn, and he tried that field goal and had all those big boys up front trying to hold him out so he could get that field goal off, and didn't even really think about what was going to happen next, and that was the field goal return. And who would have ever thought that was going to happen? So, there's still little things that he doesn't do perfect, and no coach can cover everything with a 19 and 20-year-old kids. But, as a whole, you can see the difference between the good coaches and the great coaches because of the way their teams finish. But a lot of it has to do with the strength of your team and the depth of your team.
Okay.
And I think that's where Alabama really has an advantage over anybody else, or most teams. There might be 2 or 3 other teams that has the skilled players that Alabama does, and has the beef up front as like Alabama. And I think that would be, Ohio State and LSU that could go toe to toe with them for 60 minutes and not fall to a less superior, to a more superior team. And there's only a few of those out there. I'm thinking Michigan's on its way to being that type of team. Florida, we saw Florida this week. They got after Missouri at Missouri, and you mentioned all the punts. I mean, you saw the game.
Yep.
What do you think about the way Florida handled that situation on the road?
I think, first of all, you hit the nail on the head on the road. We talked, and we've got a special guest coming up from Florida, and we'll keep that a secret till we reveal that. I think that's coming out tomorrow on Booty and Baribeau. But, that's the thing. It was on the road. That magic has been swamp magic. So the question was, can they handle it on the road? And what you and I talked about last week is, and I did a show with Lou Holtz this weekend for SiriusXM, and it was Josh. It was just, we're working with a legend. And he talked about, being competitive and learning how to finish, as you mentioned, and then being able to handle the accolades and being able to handle people talking about you in a positive manner, and then learning to win the championships. So he's really kind of talking about the progressions for a championship team, and I think they were kind of at that number 3, if you will, and that was learning how to take all the praise and be able to stay humble and not let it go to your head. They went on the road. You mentioned the punts. 18 punts. I mean, this is old school SEC defensive football. And I just thought that was, unreal. 21-3 sets up a monster matchup. We're going to be down in Baton Rouge this weekend. And I said it. I've got a board behind me. You and I keep notes throughout the weekend. And it may be too soon to ask it, but I'm just going to ask it because we ask all kinds of crazy things in this podcast. Is this finally the year that the East becomes really competitive with the West again in that SEC championship, and we expect a slobber knocker, a Donnybrook, an old-fashioned just battle, and I would love to see that this year, Josh.
Yeah, I think the East is definitely better, and that's because of Florida's resurgence into the East and the way that they're playing ball. If they happen to go to LSU this week and win that ball game on the road, then now we know we have a sleeping giant that is awoke. I mean, that's how close they are at this point in the season to being that type of team where we know that, hey, these guys are not pretenders, they're contenders. They're going to probably be in Atlanta. They have another big game at the end of the year with Georgia that we were all looking forward to. Georgia's not playing that well. Chubb's injured for the season. That's going to really hurt Georgia and their program. So, Florida right now is they're in the driver's seat like crazy heading into this big week at LSU, and it's going to be fun. I can't wait to hang down there with you and be amongst the Cajun footballers.
All right, so this is your home turf. We're going to talk about more later in the week, but I'm expecting you to take me to like the best tailgates. I need the best gumbo. I need you to show me how it's done because I've only been down there once. I skipped a sorority function and got in big trouble when I was in college. And the next time I was working with College Game Day Radio, so I was working the whole time. So I'm expecting you during the day before the game to show me all the sights and the sounds. But I got to ask you about Georgia. You mentioned Georgia. Two things happening, two big storylines, and one is obviously Nick Chubb. I read this morning our own Dan Matthews on Gridiron Now, and different people from Gridiron Now had updates, and that was great. Very timely updates. But I think the ACL is still intact, but there is ligament damage. They are having to wait for a while for the swelling to go down to be able to perform surgery. But there is, hope there. But can I say this, Josh? CBS decided not to replay it, but yet I get on my timeline on Facebook, and I've got like 17 people, I'm exaggerating, maybe like 3, that have done a still shot of his leg bent backwards and said, pray for Chubb. I'm like, please stop showing that.
Yeah, you hate to see injuries like that and, take that type of dominating player, dominating force off your team. And he was dead in the middle of the Heisman race. You hate that it happened at the very beginning of that ball game. He lost a chance to really show the world last week how good he is. And coming off that loss at Alabama, I'm sure he wanted to come out and prove something. Hey, we're for real. We're not just that team that's going to get walked over. And to see them lose Chubb and lose the game, it's reminiscent of last year when Treadwell got hurt going into the end zone, where they not only lost their best player in Treadwell, but they lost the game against Auburn, Ole Miss. That happened at Ole Miss. And so, you hate to see those types of things because it takes the wind out of your sails as a team. You've worked hard as heck to come back from a devastating loss at home. You have a real opportunity to show the world, hey, you're a good football team again. That was just a 1 week moment. Everybody has them. And then to suffer that loss, your best player going out, your Heisman Trophy candidate, that's really a devastating blow for Georgia, and I hate that for Mark Richt and the program, but that's just life.
Josh, you mentioned Mark Richt. Where do you stand on the Mark Richt debate? Are you let him go? We need new blood. We need Kirby Smart, right? We need Kirby Smart to come home. Or are you on the side of be careful what you wish for, a la Phil Fulmer, a la Tennessee, a la Ole Miss there for a while after Cutcliffe. I mean, I could go on and on. Be careful what you wish for. Where does Josh Booty stand on the Richt debate?
Well, as an individual, there's no one better, and not anybody. I mean, he is top-notch, top-level guy. But we haven't seen Georgia win a title in forever. There's got to be some stir up there, whether it's him, taking a back seat and leaving the program at a pretty high level, because I think they're at a pretty darn high level as far as talent is concerned. I think that those talks are going to start arising because Georgia, this season's not over. There's a lot of football
Yeah.
left, and if they take a downward spiral right now in the SEC East, with the SEC East, other than Florida, I don't think there's a lot of great teams, and so. Them losing to Tennessee was a big blow. I hate to say, kick boot Mark Richt out of there. He's got no chance. I'd hate to say that because I think he's a really good football coach. I just think that the overall culture at Georgia has to change if they want to win championships. They don't look mean. They don't look tough. We saw them on the sideline against Bama. They look stunned early, and it's like they just look like they got really no fight in them. And some games they come out and play well and they look great and they're fantastic, but sometimes they don't. And so I blame that a lot on the leadership at the top, and that's just the culture he's created. He's such a nice guy that they got 110 nice guys on the sideline. It's time to have a bunch of mean guys that want to win football games, and until they have that and set the tone, then they're going to have a hard time winning an SEC championship with all the studs in our conference.
I'm just wondering what the difference is in the culture with Alabama and the culture with Georgia. And I think you said it.
It's the mean streak that Saban has. And McElwain, we saw him on the sideline. As bad as that is when you berate a kid, I'm telling you, he's got a mean streak in him. And I'm telling you, so just imagine what he's saying in the locker room if he's doing that on the field. Same thing with Saban. If he'll jump and spit on you on the field, what do you think he's doing in the locker room? He is firing those son of guns up, and that's why Florida's at the point where they believe they can take on the world right now. And Alabama's got when you piece that together with a bunch of studs on your sideline and some big bad motor scooters, then that's when you got a team that can have the opportunity to win a national. But that's true. I mean, if you got the recruits like Alabama does, yeah. Florida's got team speed, and they've got now they've got a great coach at the helm. You got a chance to win a title. I mean, they're going to get to the SEC championship game this year, and what does that mean? They're one game away from going to the BCS playoff. So I mean, that's how close Florida is, and they don't even really realize it yet because the season's only halfway done. But this week at LSU is just going to be epic matchup.
Big bad motor scooters. I'm gonna coin that, Josh Booty. I'm gonna coin that.
Yeah.
What about that LSU South Carolina game? Listen, I asked it legitimately on Twitter on Saturday. I asked why weren't there more people there, and it wasn't a knock on LSU fans. It was legitimately explain to me why there weren't more people there, and what people said was change of obviously the change of venue, the change the location change, people making plans, all sorts of things. You would hope there would have been more people there for that game. It's also a downtrodden South Carolina team.
Yeah, half the people in Louisiana last week probably planned their wedding on that date because they were going to be out of town. I mean, that's how serious they are about their football. So yeah. You can't take a real knock on the fans or the attendance for that game. I think LSU came out and established a run. We knew they would. That's what their identity is. They had two Fournette and Geis both rushed over 100 yards. I mean, South Carolina, we've seen that defense. They're not the type of defense that's going to contend in the SEC this year. They're just a little light in the pants and don't get the job done. So I think that's LSU was just focusing on helping make sure that South Carolina got all that it needed on that road trip, and then let's get down to business. Fournette did a wonderful job, and they've really got a three-headed monster there with the three tailbacks at LSU doing a phenomenal job. But the fans will be there this week. Don't worry.
I mean, Josh, we do this every week, and between the two of us, we have come up with some very interesting language. You light in the pants, big bad motor scooter. I said, you line up in last week and knock your bleep in the dirt. I mean, you gotta stay tuned to this podcast because you never know what's going to come out of one or both of our mouths. But I got to ask you, you were talking about Saban, and so take our listeners, our viewers, kind of behind the curtain. Give us your best Saban memory, whether it's the time he got after you or something that he told you or taught you that you still carry with you today. Give us a peek behind the Saban curtain, if you will.
There's so many things that I learned from him. When you're in the locker room with him, you don't enjoy it because but you know that it's big for your team, and you know that it's big for yourself individually, because the way that he just gets your attention, and a lot of coaches don't get your attention. They come up to you and you're like in one ear out the other. There's coaches been in our locker room or have coached me at halftime and have a locker room speech, and you're like, this guy, he looks like a fool. And then there's some guys like Nick Saban where you're like, you stand in attention. I mean, he just got that type of leadership quality, I guess, that's so different than most, he's a Bill Belichick clone, is what they all say. So I can only imagine what it'd be like to be in a Patriots locker room. But Saban does preach 60 minutes and situational football and attitude and will to win and your character and how do you want to leave a legacy and getting the most out of yourself, and we talked about it a little earlier. The strength and conditioning program that he puts in place is second to none. You feel like a well-oiled machine when you take the field, and so you don't think that the other team, there's no way that they've outworked you. And I think that that's where the difference is just the feeling of the committed feeling that you have and the attitude that you have once you take the field. Is I don't see how the other team could beat us. There's no way that they could. I mean, we'd have to half of us would have to be injured and taken off the field for us to lose this game. I mean, that's how prepared we were. But he coaches every situation, and I do want to get back to the finishing. I mean, he coaches, even though he's a defensive guy, he really pays a lot of attention to 2-minute offense. We prepare well at using your timeouts correctly, staying in bounds, little things, getting out of bounds. Are you in 4-down territory? Do we have a field goal kicker that can make that 47-yarder, or do we need to push it a little bit further in to the red zone where that kick becomes a little easier, maybe because of the strength of our kicker? Special teams play, the hands team.
Yes.
There's so many little things in the game. Handling momentum shifts. Don't let them get you on your heels too long. As soon as they make a big play, you got to hit back right now. You can't wait around and let momentum shift completely in the other direction where there's a huge turnaround. Things like that. Dealing with crowd noise. A lot of things that some coaches do and some coaches don't teach well, and Saban does.
All right, Josh. Outside the SEC, as we wrap up this looking back podcast, I gotta tell you what struck me. I gotta hear what struck you this weekend. We as myself as a person been in the media for about 10 years, and you as a former athlete that's making that turn into the media and businessman. We're not supposed to necessarily care, and you're supposed to be objective. But what I saw in the Red River shootout, I'm still going to call it the shootout. I'm old school, right? What I saw in the shootout on Saturday was nothing short of spectacular. It was miraculous. And that was a coach that apparently, according to Chip Brown, I work with him over at SiriusXM, he said he went into, that Charlie Strong went into his staff this week and said, listen, we got to develop a game plan. And if we don't develop a game plan to be able to run the ball and win a ball game and close out and finish, as you talked about, we're all gone. And he said it to the players. I think the players had a meeting, and they said nobody's leaving here till they get it all out, right? And they went out there, and you and I were texting back and forth. They played like somebody had lit a fire under there. You know what? I mean, they were inspired. And then to see him get the Gatorade bath afterwards, and his boss behind him is like cheering. An older, I mean, he's going crazy. He's got the hat. That was really neat to see, even though I had Oklahoma high in my rankings.
I noticed that. Oklahoma didn't take care of its business, but Texas had a lot to do with it. And one of the things that Charlie mentioned after the game is, hey, we got a pretty darn good football team. And that's how you create, I think, a domino effect in a positive direction, is win a game like that, then say something like that, and then your team starts really believing in it, and things come to fruition like that. I mean, you've got to start somewhere, right? He had to start somewhere. He could not go any lower. They were so dismal on offense the first 4 games of the season, it was embarrassing. And for them to come in and beat up on a top 10 team like they did and really establish the run and establish the line of scrimmage. It was theirs on Saturday. That game is so early in the morning. Some people don't even catch the game, the first half of the game, but I was up, drinking my coffee and drinking my orange juice watching it because I knew that a rivalry game, anything can happen. It's like the Michigan Ohio State. Ohio State's been great the last few years, but don't tell me Michigan can't come up for one big breath of fresh air and lay a knockout punch. I mean, those teams can do that. So it's scary. Those games are so scary for a team like Oklahoma that's favored so much because a lot of the players they can think it's a fun week. Let's get down to Dallas and have some fun and just wax Texas. And the next thing you know, they look up and they're not prepared or ill prepared for the game. And Texas wakes up a little bit earlier and just starts setting the tone. And I'm so happy for Charlie Strong that he got that win.
Big game Bob lives. I hate it, but it's true, Josh.
No doubt about it.
He lives up to his moniker. I mean, he's lays the egg. He has a tendency to lay the egg in the big games. And, I mean, it is what it is. Another big game late, I had to hold my eyeballs open for it, was the Cal-Utah game. And Jared Goff everybody's talking about him. He's going to be the best when it comes, the first passer taken in the NFL draft. The kid has, 5 picks, 5 turnovers. I mean, it's not good for Cal, but, I'm interested and I'm curious your thoughts. When you've seen Oregon, a more finesse team, go against an SEC team when it was Auburn, and then certainly against Ohio State, it was really, and we talk about all the time in the trenches, in the line of scrimmage, they just couldn't, they didn't match up. I'm wondering now, this Utah team with phenomenal trench play, phenomenal special teams play, phenomenal defense, and a quarterback who's been through everything in Travis Wilson and lived to tell about it. They're playing on all 3 phases of the game, and I'm just curious what that kind of Pac-12 team would match up against, particularly an SEC team in a playoff game.
I think Utah's got a great squad. I think they run the football well too, and I like the way that their play calling has gone through the season. Now, Goff did have a bad first half. He threw 4 picks in the first half, giving Utah the ball 4 more times than they should have, and they were able to win the ball game. I think Utah's got some big games coming up, and they're not going to be easy. I think there's so much parity in the Pac-12 that anybody can beat anybody. This week, UCLA goes to Stanford, and that's a huge game in the Pac-12. And I think one of those 3 teams is probably your best team: Utah, UCLA, or Stanford. I think SC losing to Washington at home, and what's happening with Steve Sarkisian right now in their camp is not good. I think that's the worst thing that could happen to the program is for your leader, your head coach, your head ball coach to be, asked to take a leave of absence. Sarkisian might be with us at LSU tailgating this week. That's how it's going for him. I mean, that's how bad of a situation he's in, and it doesn't look promising. But you asked about Utah. I love the way that their quarterback Wilson's playing football. He can run the football. He's a big, strong kid. Their defense is playing great. I see them right now coming out of the Pac-12 unless a UCLA or a Stanford can really get hot.
All right, final thoughts on the weekend that was, Josh Booty.
We had some games where Oklahoma gets knocked off. Georgia gets his second loss. So a lot of these teams that we felt were top 10 caliber teams or top 15 teams and teams that were going to be in some potential BCS talk, went down. And I'm happy for some of these coaches to get the monkey off their back, Charlie Strong and Butch Jones. I guess that's what you could call it this week is some guys, some good coaches got some big time wins for themselves and for their program, and hopefully we'll see Texas come around. Texas is another sleeping giant, just like Florida was before this season. So, and then Michigan and Harbaugh and what they've done up there has been awesome this week. A huge game in Ann Arbor with Michigan State. Michigan's actually favored, and Michigan State's a top 4 team in the AP. So it's an unbelievable game. It's going to be an amazing atmosphere. I wish I could be at 3 games this week. I wish I could be at the Alabama A&M. I'm going to be at the LSU Florida, but Michigan State would not be a bad choice to be at this week as well. So, I mean, it's going to be a fun week of football, and pretty excited about it.
All right, we're going to be coming back at you very soon with a special guest from Florida. We'll be back on Booty and Baribeau. He is Josh Booty. I'm Rachel Baribeau. We'll see you soon.